So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are getting into something really fascinating today. You know, when you look at the blueprints for some of our wildest science fiction dreams?
Oh, yeah, like warp drives, traversable wormholes, faster than light travel.
Exactly. You look at those concepts, and there is usually this one glaring, incredibly annoying warning label slapped right across the math.
Yeah, the big red flag.
Right. It essentially says, this requires impossible physics to operate because you can build this beautiful theoretical engine on a whiteboard, but when you go to calculate what it takes to actually power the thing, the universe just politely taps the sign that says, no negative energy allowed.
It really is the ultimate cosmic roadblock, isn't it? I mean, general relativity allows it to design the geometry of a warp bubble perfectly. We know exactly how the space should bend.
But actually bending it is the problem.
Right, because to physically create that bending, the math demands a fuel source that essentially has, well, less than zero mass energy.
Which makes no sense.
It doesn't. You're asking the universe for a type of matter that pushes instead of pulls. It's something that fundamentally contradicts our everyday experience of gravity.
And that has basically always been a hard stop for physicists. We pack up the whiteboard, we go home. But there's this independent researcher, Miguel Jorge Díaz, who recently published a paper that might just rewrite that rulebook entirely.
Yeah, it's a really incredible piece of work.
It is. He found this mathematical loophole, basically a new toolkit, that could offer a way to actually audit those cosmic blueprints instead of just throwing them in the trash. The paper is called Spectral Energy Regularization in Lorentzian Spacetimes.
Quite a title.
Yeah, very dense. But our mission for this deep dive is to see if we can unpack this. We want to see if we can solve this stubborn problem of impossible negative energy without actually breaking the fundamental laws of the universe.
Which is a tall order. But, I mean, if you can picture a 3D map of space-time glowing right in front of us, that's the scale we're working on today.
I love that visual.
Yeah, we're diving into the very fabric of how matter tells space-time to curve. And crucially, how space-time pushes back when you ask it to do something totally unnatural.
Right. But before we get into the actual solution, we should probably look at the machinery of the problem first. Like, why does the universe hate negative energy so much?
Well, it comes down to something called the energy-momentum tensor.
Okay, the energy-momentum tensor.
Yeah, think of this tensor as the ultimate cosmic spreadsheet. It basically tracks the density and the flow of energy and momentum in any given region of space.
So it's keeping the books for reality.
Exactly. When general relativity wants to know how much to curve a piece of space-time, it looks at this spreadsheet. And traditionally, physicists impose these really strict accounting rules on the tensor, which are known as classical energy conditions.
Right, I've heard of these, like the weak energy condition or the null energy condition.
Essentially, yes. Those are the big ones. And these conditions are basically mathematical rules demanding that any physical observer, no matter how fast they're traveling or what direction they're facing, must measure the local energy density as zero or positive.
So the accounting ledger can literally never show a negative balance.
Never. You cannot have a region of space where the fundamental energy is just, less than nothing.
Which, I mean, for everyday physics, those rules make complete sense to me. Planets, orbiting stars, apples falling from trees, they all obey those conditions perfectly.
Right, because positive energy creates standard gravity, which pulls things together.
Yeah, and if you had macroscopic negative energy just floating around, gravity would become repulsive, right? Like things would fall upward. It would be total chaos.
Absolute chaos. But here's the thing. The universe isn't just made of apples and planets. We also have quantum mechanics.
Ah, right. The troublemaker of physics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which throws a massive wrench into those classical rules. Because even in completely empty space, like a total vacuum, quantum mechanics allows for these tiny fluctuations where the local energy density can temporarily dip below zero.
Wait, really? Just in empty space?
Yeah, it happens all the time. The classical rules say absolutely not, but quantum fields are constantly doing it on a microscopic scale.
Okay, so the universe is already cheating a little bit.
Just a little.
Yeah.
But when you scale that up to exotic space-time geometries, like, say, contracting space in front of a starship and expanding it behind to create a warp bubble, you're actively demanding enormous amounts of this negative energy.
So the blueprints demand it, but the classical ledger completely forbids it. So how does Díaz-Luna's paper actually resolve this? Because he isn't just throwing out the classical rules, is he?
No. not at all. He takes a completely different angle. Instead of demanding that the energy is positive for all observers in that traditional way, he proposes applying a specific mathematical operation directly to the tensor itself. He calls this a spectral regularization map. It's an operator-level admissibility criterion.
Okay, hold on, operator level, meaning we aren't changing the physical matter, we're changing how the math processes the matter.
Exactly. We're changing how we calculate the energy states. The math uses a functional calculus to apply a very specific formula to the eigenvalues, the spectral modes, or the core energy states of the energy momentum tensor.
And what's the formula? Let's get into the math.
The formula he uses is the square root of lambda squared plus epsilon squared.
Okay, let me make sure I follow the variables here. Lambda would be the original spectral mode of the energy.
Right.
And epsilon, what is that doing?
Epsilon is a very small positive cutoff value. Think of it as a baseline. So you take the original energy value, you square it, you add this tiny epsilon squared to it, and then you take the square root of the whole thing.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because if I remember basic algebra, squaring a negative number makes it positive.
Exactly.
So by squaring the energy value first, any negative energy states automatically become positive. And because we're adding that little epsilon squared before taking the square root, the final value can literally never drop to zero.
Right. It will always be at least as big as epsilon.
Wow, okay. So we've effectively converted negative energy into strictly positive data.
That is the mechanical outcome of the operation, yeah.
But I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Because if I have a negative bank balance, say I owe the bank $1,000, I can't just square my debt, add a tiny number, and take the square root to claim to the bank that I actually have $1,000 in the black.
Yeah, the bank is going to arrest you for fraud.
Right. So aren't we just sweeping negative energy under the mathematical rug here?
That is exactly the trap that older theoretical models often fell into, actually. Physicists would hit a wall with negative energy, so they would introduce this ghost compensator by hand just to make the equations balance out.
Just literally making up numbers.
Pretty much. It was exactly like hiding your debt in a fake offshore account so the ledger looked clean. But Díaz-Luna's framework is distinctly different because his mathematical trick generates a measurable penalty. It is not free.
Oh, interesting. Meaning the universe still knows we tampered with the ledger.
Yes. When you alter the tensor with this nonlinear mathematical function, it no longer perfectly conserves energy and momentum in the way general relativity demands.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. By forcing those negative values into the positive domain, you create a non-conservation, a mathematical leak, basically.
So energy is literally spilling out of the system.
Exactly. And in the paper, this leak is derived using something called a Fréchet derivative. It calculates the exact cost of this spectral manipulation.
It gives you the receipt.
Right. This creates what the model calls an exchange current, represented by the letter Q. So you've created a structural debt, and this current Q has to go somewhere. The fabric of spacetime itself has to pay the bill.
Okay, this is where it feels like we shift from just playing with math to actual physical mechanics.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if spacetime has to pay the bill, it needs a mechanism to do that. And the paper integrates this with a broader framework called the TTN, right? Or the nodal theory.
Yes, the nodal theory. It suggests that the background of the universe isn't just an empty stage. It has structural degrees of freedom, like a structural balance sector that can physically absorb this exchange current.
And what does that sector look like?
Well, it requires a few specific components to work. The background needs a coherence field, and it needs a massive vectorial balance, one form.
A one form.
Yeah, you can think of that one form as a multidimensional shock absorber. It's designed to handle the multi-directional flow of this raw leaking energy current we just talked about.
Okay, that makes sense. A shock absorber.
But the most crucial component is a scalar field called the nodal pressure field, denoted as K.
The nodal pressure field. Okay, and this is tied directly back to that tiny cutoff value, the epsilon that we used in the math earlier, right?
Yes. The paper establishes this brilliant constitutive link here. Epsilon isn't just a random small number chosen to make the math work.
It's not just a placeholder.
No. The square of epsilon is dynamically equal to a baseline constant, plus a constant, multiplied by the square of this nodal pressure, K.
Wait, so the cutoff value, that mathematical floor we established, is dynamically determined by the structural pressure of spacetime itself.
Exactly.
That reminds me so much of structural engineering. Like, imagine you're trying to build a massive, heavy skyscraper. You can't just put it on a random patch of loose dirt.
Right. The soil has to have a specific bearing capacity or the whole thing just sinks.
Yes. So in this framework, the nodal pressure is basically the soil-bearing capacity of the universe.
That's a perfect analogy.
So if your sci-fi warp drive generates a massive exchange current, it demands a huge amount of pressure from the space-time background. And if the background can't support it, the system fails. The universe basically rejects your building permit.
Exactly. And to prevent the universe from accidentally tearing itself apart trying to support these exotic structures, the framework includes a local fixed-point safeguard. It acts as a feedback loop.
How does that loop work?
Well, when the diagnostic exchange current forces the structural sector to respond, the nodal pressure is going to spike. But that spike must not trigger a runaway exponential feedback loop.
So the system has to relax faster than the current is pushing it.
Precisely. The response to an increase in nodal pressure must mathematically be weaker than the intrinsic relaxation of the pressure sector itself.
And if it isn't?
If the structural sector cannot handle the exchange current, like if it causes runaway feedback, or if the mathematical limits blow up to infinity, then the space-time configuration is explicitly flagged as structurally inadmissible. It was a hard physical limitation.
Man, that raises a massive question for quantum physicists, though. Because we established earlier that quantum mechanics already plays fast and loose with negative energy. Vacuum fluctuations do this all the time.
They do, yeah.
So physicists have been using something called quantum energy inequalities, or QEIs, to balance those books for years. Does this new audit completely overwrite their work?
Well, it doesn't overwrite it, but it operates on a fundamentally different philosophy. Think of quantum mechanics as offering an energetic payday loan.
A payday loan. Okay.
Yeah, quantum energy inequalities dictate that you are allowed to borrow negative energy, but you're constrained by a weighted average. So if an observer sees negative energy, they must eventually see a compensating amount of positive energy shortly after.
Got it. So the average over time has to remain positive.
Right. You can go into debt, but you have to pay back before the billing cycle ends.
Right. But Díaz-Luna's spectral mapping is different.
Very different. It doesn't care about averages over time. It applies a direct mapping to the tensor's endomorphism right there on the spot.
Oh, wow.
It demands an immediate, real-time structural payment from the universe the exact second the negative energy appears.
So it's a real-time structural tax, not an average over time.
Exactly. Which creates this really interesting hierarchy of how we classify matter and energy. At the base, you have classical matter, planets and stars. They naturally satisfy the positive energy conditions. No problem.
Right.
Then you have semi-classical matter, like your quantum fluctuations, which might violate the local classical rules but can pass the average time tests of the QEIs.
They pay back their loans.
Right. But this new framework adds a strict physical diagnostic layer on top of all of that. Spectral structural positivity.
So a negative local mode isn't just allowed or forbidden anymore. It has to either stay within those quantum payday loan limits, or it has to be paid for in real time by a structural exchange current that space-time can actually dynamically balance without breaking.
You nailed it. Which brings us to the ultimate stress test. The paper actually provides a reduced diagnostic model for an Alcubierre-type warp drive.
The famous Alcubierre metric. Okay, I know this one. It mathematically works in general relativity. It allows a ship to travel faster than light by riding a wave of space-time, but it notoriously requires a massive ring of negative energy around the ship.
Yeah, and normally physics just looks at that and says, sorry, you can't build it.
But with this new framework,
With this spectral mapping, instead of giving a hard no, the math converts the warp drive's negative energy profile into a positive one, plus a massive structural exchange requirement. It calculates the exact structural bill the universe would have to pay to allow that warp drive bubble to exist.
wait, so we aren't saying we can build a warp drive tomorrow, right?
No. The paper is clear that this is a reduced model. I mean, it omits transverse stresses and full four-dimensional bubble dynamics.
But still, for the first time, we aren't just staring at a does not exist error message. We actually have a price tag. We can calculate the exact cost the universe would incur if we tried to turn the engine on.
It's a huge shift in perspective. And I think to fully appreciate it, we have to consider the mind behind this audit, because the motivation really shapes the math here.
Right, Miguel Jorge Díaz-Luna.
Yeah. He's an independent researcher based in Spain and the author of the broader TTN framework, which is also known as the Nodal code. And his explicitly stated motivation in the paper is quite striking.
How so?
Well, he is not trying to present a magical theory of everything that just wishes away negative energy so we can have cool sci-fi spaceships.
He seems to actively dislike magic math.
He really does.
Yeah.
His primary goal is to create a falsifiable admissibility test. He wants to ensure that any mathematical regularization we try to use in physics is physically grounded and dynamically supported.
Right, keeping it rooted in reality.
Exactly. If the math says a wormhole works, he wants a rigid operational protocol that checks if the physical structure of space can actually bear the load.
And he lays out that protocol as a journey, right? It's not just a simple equation. It's a comprehensive stress test with several major checkpoints.
7 steps, to be precise.
Okay, let's walk through them. You start by setting up the board. You take the energy momentum tensor of your theoretical engine, and you form the mixed endomorphism.
Which is essentially just translating the raw energy blueprint into a matrix format so you can actually perform complex operations on it.
Right. And once you have it translated, you hit the first major hurdle, a math tangle. You have to identify the spectral chart.
Yes. Step 2. If the energy states are simple, you use standard projectors. But Díaz notes that if things get mathematically messy, what physicists call a non-semi-simple block, where the matrix geometry tangles up on itself, you can't just use normal mapping.
Because it would just break down.
The normal mapping would completely break down. So he utilizes advanced holomorphic resolvent formulas. These are highly sophisticated mathematical tools that safely untangle the spectrum, basically allowing you to map the energy without breaking the geometry.
Okay, so after you untangle it, step 3 is you set your baseline. You choose your structural fields and determine the local cutoff based on that nodal pressure we discussed.
Right, you figure out exactly how strong the soil of the universe is in that specific region.
And step 4, you run the spectral map. You push those negative energy values into the positive domain.
And immediately, step 5, you calculate the leak. You evaluate the exact magnitude of the exchange current, Q, that you just forced into the background of space-time.
You find out the size of the bill.
Exactly. Then comes step 6, the balancing act. You have to solve the balance equations for the structural fields, ensuring that the multidimensional shock absorber, that massive one-form field, can actually handle the four-dimensional flow of the current.
Which leads to the final verdict, step 7.
The ultimate test.
You accept the exotic energy source only if the total effective tensor remains conserved after the exchange, and all the structural fields remain regular without triggering that infinite runaway feedback loop.
Exactly. If your warp drive passes all those checkpoints, your theoretical geometry is structurally admissible.
But if it fails, the universe rejects it.
It's that simple.
Man, we have really moved from the blunt instrument of classical energy conditions, which just blindly outlawed anything negative, to this incredibly nuanced mathematical audit.
We really have.
Yeah.
We've explored how the spectral calculus identifies the problem, how the Fréchet derivative calculates the cost, and how the nodal pressure field acts as the crucial foundation, physically paying the structural debt created by exotic physics.
It keeps theoretical physics honest.
It does. By demanding that every mathematical trick has a dynamically balanced real-world cost.
So, if you are someone hoping to see a warp drive or a wormhole become reality, what does this actually mean for you? It means the hurdle isn't just about finding some magical negative energy fuel anymore. It's about structural engineering on a cosmic scale.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating, provocative thought. I mean, this entire model hinges on the idea that the underlying structure of space-time, this nodal pressure, must foot the bill for exotic phenomena.
Right.
But if that structural background is a physical field, could a sufficiently advanced civilization learn to interact with it directly?
Oh, wow. That is wild. You mean instead of just checking if the universe is strong enough to support a warp bubble, you actively reinforce the fabric of space first?
Exactly. Could we one day learn to artificially inflate or manipulate that baseline nodal pressure in a localized area? Could we literally trick the structural background of the universe into safely subsidizing the massive energy costs of a traversable wormhole?
So we might not just be stuck reading the warning labels of the universe. Eventually, we might learn how to rewrite the building codes.
It's definitely something to sit with.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the spectral mechanics of space-time. Keep questioning the fundamental structure of reality, and we will catch you next time.